Motorsport Advancement Crusade presents Motorsports Unlimited.
Hi, I'm Angie Kay.
I'm Andrea Oswald, and we want to welcome you to Motorsports Unlimited, Part 133.
Today's show is about boats. Not just any boats, but the very exclusive world of offshore boats.
That's right, the big ocean-going speedboats often, usually erroneously, referred to as cigarette boats.
We are going to learn why identifying all offshore boats as cigarette boats is incorrect, and a whole lot more about them.
Bill was astonished to find a shop right here in the Chicagoland area that builds and races these ocean-going craft.
Most of these boats are built in Miami or California.
But we don't have an ocean.
But right here in Lake Bluff on the Lake Michigan shore is one of the best offshore racers in the country.
Let's meet him.
Well, in our continuing series featuring personal watercraft, Angie, you missed it today.
Yes, I did.
Do you know what personal watercraft are?
They're like jet skis, right?
Right, and this is sort of a continuation of that series. And let me introduce our guests first of all. I mean that as sort of a joke, and I should stay away from humor. I have absolutely no ability whatsoever for humor. First of all, and everyone knows Bill Wildt knows that we always talk to the pretty girls first, last, and always. Only if we get stuck do we end up talking to the guys. First of all, will you tell our audience your name?
Deborah Caston.
And Deborah, you made your debut on our show a couple weeks ago, but you didn't see it, right?
No, I hadn't. I hadn't yet.
Well, we're going to make sure that you get on. What is your position here?
Controller.
Okay, you're also the secretary and answer the phone and all that?
Yeah, I do everything in the office.
Okay, now you know that I've got to talk to the guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Bob, tell our audience your name, please.
Bob Oetringer.
And Bob, we are at, I guess we could call this is your shop. This is Thunderboats.
Yes, this is Thunderboats.
Okay, I've got a good way that I want to introduce this, and this is going to be hard to explain to you guys because you haven't seen this footage, but Angie really has the best introduction of all for this particular show, and I want to show that to our audience, and then we'll get into it. So, folks, don't go away. I want you to hear this, and it'll kind of explain what this show is going to be about. We're going to shift gears and go to offshore powerboat racing. Now, do you have any idea what those are?
It's a strange name because I would assume most boats are offshore.
Okay.
So,
very well
what
said.
does it mean, though?
Pardon me?
What does it mean?
Well, offshore racing, essentially what they're talking about is boats that are essentially ocean-going boats. In other words, if you're going to run a race, say, from Miami to Atlanta.
Oh, so they're very far offshore, like
yeah, like ocean.
like the America's
craft.
Cup type thing?
Yeah, but these are power boats, not America's Cup, of course, yes, but
Well,
that would be
that's
sailing
sailing,
craft.
right.
Okay, but we're talking about power boats, okay? And these are big time. In fact, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's, we've got, hopefully, if we're real smart now, I'll put a little bit of a music thing together with rolling some footage that I took a couple of quick cut shots of these things, and hopefully if we're doing this right now, we're watching Debbie, and she is in front of a boat with I think they're 600 cubic inch Chevy engines, and this is an ungodly fast boat, and in any event, folks, we'll be right back. We wanted to have you take a look at these beautiful craft and show you the show we're putting together. Now, what do you think? Did I find boats or did I find boats? All right, we're back. Angie, you wanted to know about offshore boats.
Yes, I did.
Okay, and that was an by the way, one of the things, and Bob, you haven't seen what we just showed our audience, but essentially what it was I did a little, like a little promo piece for this show about the boats because we came out here a couple weeks ago. You weren't here, and we just took some pictures of the boats that you had sitting on the trailers. And I told Angie, what we're going to do here, this is going to be a show about offshore boats. And I'm certainly no boat expert, but I know enough about boats to be excited about offshore boats. They're really something. Offshore boats, and she said, totally unimpressed the way girls can do. She says, well, I would assume all boats are offshore. How would you respond to that?
Well, not all boats are offshore boats.
Now, wait a minute. Tell me some boats that are onshore boats.
Okay, well, it's just a term used offshore.
You see what I mean? Now, how do you explain it to the girl?
Okay, an offshore boat is a boat that can go out there in rough seas and attack it and be able to go at a very large rate of speed through rough water.
Okay, let me clarify, because that's almost a little bit too inside boating lingo. Let me clarify this just a little bit for our audience. Offshore boats essentially are drug boats, right?
They originally started out as that.
I'm only kidding. I better get them off the hook real quick here. Essentially, the reason I say that is because everybody that has seen Miami Vice knows cigarette boats and like that, and those are generally considered drug boats, but they're really not drug boats, right? I mean, we call them that in society because television has popularized it that way, but that's not really what they are.
No, they aren't. They're pleasure boats, and there is race boats. They're all the same type of hulls, and people use them for pleasure to go fast, and they have cabins and little bathrooms and everything down below.
Okay, essentially what we are talking about. Yes, Angie.
I'll tell you what they're for. They're for silly girls with silly feathers to ride around on.
Well, that's another possibility, but I do want our audience to understand that what we are talking about essentially is really quite large craft that are used for, I would call them ocean-going vessels. And Debbie, let me get you into the conversation. Ocean-going vessels, would you agree?
Yes, large lakes, ocean racing, and
Okay, the thing that surprised me, and I won't go through the whole song and dance as to how I found out about you guys, but what surprises me is that most of these kind of craft are built in the Miami area, and in fact, most of what we might call offshore racing would be done, say, in the Miami area, or maybe Miami to Atlantic City, or something like that. And Bob, I don't know how to tell you this, but this ain't an ocean here.
No, it isn't. You are right that most of the stuff originated down there in Miami and the southern half of Florida, but we're bringing it up here, and it's getting very popular up here on the Great Lakes. A lot of people are just starting to get into it. We're a little bit behind the times, about 5 to 8 years behind the times on these.
Yeah, and matter of fact, as I thought about this, and I should tell our audience that we have just returned from really an incredible ride. We took the girls, we wanted to get some action footage. We're going to show you that in a couple of minutes. We wanted to get some action footage of these boats. Boy, these things are something else. The thing that, it never really occurred to me, but Lake Michigan is a huge body of water, as all the other Great Lakes are, and I would assume that a boat of this size and this power and this speed could be of great fun on something like Lake Michigan.
Oh, it's a lot of fun out there. Lake Michigan is actually considered one of the most treacherous bodies of water. It is more, it gets rougher than the ocean does, because the ocean has huge swells, and Lake Michigan's got a short chop to it.
Girls, did you hear that? That's a more dangerous thing.
Now we find that out.
A little late.
Andrea, this is your second time with us. Is that the kind of thing you just wanted to hear?
Great.
Afterwards,
it.
it's okay.
Yeah.
What was that, Chris?
Afterwards, it's okay.
Okay, let me ask you guys, what did you think? You guys just, in fact, you're totally windblown. We should tell our audience that you've just been out on the lake for at least an hour out in Lake Michigan on an incredibly fast boat. What do you think?
It was a blast. I never had so much fun. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Janet?
Oh, it was great, Bill. It was exciting.
Chris?
Just an incredible experience. Great fun.
Yeah, it really was neat. As a matter of fact, we sort of coaxed him in at the end when we got done taping to take us guys out for a little. Yeah, we were feeling sorry for ourselves. We went out for a little ride, and you're right. It is a gas. These boats are really something to run on. And I'll tell you what. Rather than have our audience wait any further, we're going to talk. Let's see. We're going to take and move stuff Is there anything else I want to say in here before we're still in the office here? Yeah, I want to say something. Debbie, you're more than just a secretary and what, controller?
Yes.
But you're more than that.
Well, I handle all the accounting.
No, way more than that.
I race, used to race.
Yes, that bingo. This is Motorsports Unlimited. You were actually a participant in offshore racing.
Yes, 2 of the offshore races on the, one on the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan, and one in Atlantic City.
Okay, I want you to tell our audience out there, what did you think?
Oh, it was an experience.
Don't fib now.
It was scary. They took me on the 2 roughest rides of the season, and I fell down twice in the boat on 6 to 8 foot waves. But no, it was exciting. It was a lot of fun. I'm not quite ready for that type of racing yet until I get a little stronger.
Well, what did you do on the boat?
I navigated.
Ah, so you were navigating. And how long was the race?
80 miles.
How long did that take?
About an hour and a half.
Ouch. Chris, you were out on that thing. Would you like to do that for an hour and a half?
Well, I was thinking about it. She told us about it before we went out on the boat, and I'm thinking, do this for an hour and a half, 80 miles an hour? I don't think so.
Yeah, it really does take a pounding. I mean, it really is quite a physical sport, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very physical and demanding sport out there because you're battling Mother Nature out there with the waves. It could be anywhere from 2-footers. We've come across a 10-footer just out of the middle of nowhere out there, and you just have to go. And it really, it's the whole thing is with the team on the true offshore boats that you would race. There's a team. There's a navigator, a driver, and a throttle man, and everybody's got a part. And it gets out there because you run in the average. You can run from 60 miles an hour up to about 140 miles an hour through stuff that the average boater may just pull out of the port and say, this is way too rough for us to be out here. That's the stuff that we thrive on.
Yeah, so like the sign that we saw in the back of the one boat, happiness is small craft warnings, that's sort of tongue-in-cheek?
Yes, that's our motto.
Okay, but apparently now you say every one of those jobs on the boat is very important, and we're going to explain those when we go out in the shop. But apparently Debbie fell down on her part of the job, and I mean fell down literally.
Right. It was we were racing in Grand Haven, and she was having a hard time holding on. It was rolling about 8-footers out there, and when we were running, we were going about 75, 80 miles an hour, and I'd hit some waves, and we'd probably span at least 4 or 5 of them, just being in the air about at least the height. When we're going that fast, we'll put the boat about 10 to 11 feet in the air.
Well, I've got to give you credit, Debbie, for having so much concern about your career that you will jump right out there and participate in the race boat effort, too. I don't think that's really going to be your cup of tea.
No, well, even how rough it was, I enjoyed it, though. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, before we go any farther, so our audience knows what we're talking about, I want to run a little of this footage that we shot and give the audience a little idea what the girls have been through and why they're all windblown and everything like that. Folks, what?
You're making it sound like it was an ordeal for us, and it wasn't. We were having big fun.
Well, wait just a minute, Christine.
You can hear the fun we were having.
Yeah, you guys had fun. I heard 2 or 3 people scream on the tape. I heard them say, Chris, are you falling out? Chris,
They kept saying that. I don't know why, but
probably because...
looked like you were falling out of the boat.
Okay, folks, you're going to really enjoy this. I want to show you what an offshore boat looks like, and then we're going to go through the technology of this thing. You're really going to enjoy this. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
I'm particularly anxious to see this footage because I didn't get to do it. This is Janet Mailer, Chris Schutz, and Andrea Oswald experiencing offshore boats for the first time.
can't begin to explain what a thrill a boat like Adrenaline is. Let's take a closer look at this beautiful craft and see what makes an offshore boat tick. So Bob, tell me about some of the stuff we have behind us.
We have a lot of stuff back here. We have drives and K-planes and all kinds of stuff that makes the boat go forward, adjust the attitude of the boat.
Wait a minute, maybe we better get Bill in here to ask the right questions.
Well, Andrea, that was nicely done. Let me just slip in between you two guys. And yeah, because I'm not going to let this guy off the hook anywhere near as easy as you probably will. What do you mean we've got all kinds of stuff back here? Exactly what do we have?
Okay, Bill, we got out drives, stern, which are the stern drives on the back of the boat. There's mufflers on this type of boat.
Okay, let's start with their mufflers. Put your hand on them.
We got a set of mufflers.
Okay, now, these look like pretty elaborate devices to me. I see a flutter valve in the back. I see a thing to control it and everything like that. What are we looking at?
Okay, these are a new...
And let me get out of the camera shot so that we can let our audience see what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Okay, these are a new type of muffler. And what it is that when you go out there and run, if you want the noise of the boat, there's a gate valve that stays open. And from the switch on the dashboard, the valves will shut. And that what it does is it directs the noise and mixes with water, and they come out the bottom. So that when you're going in harbors and that stuff with these high-powered boats, that the people don't get annoyed from the noise.
Would it be unfair of me to suggest that this is a sort of a version of maybe if you had a 1950 Merc with a cutout on it from Warshawski's, that it would kind of work the same way?
Exactly.
Okay, these are pretty sophisticated. I got a feeling high buck. They look very nice. Okay, moving on down from there, I noticed that we've got this big, relatively heavy-duty device that looks like a hydraulic cylinder. Looks like something that they might use on a dump truck. What is it?
It's a hydraulic cylinder, and it's what it does is at higher speeds it holds the stern drives tighter.
Now wait a minute. Is it just a damping device? Is that what you're saying, or does it actually steer them?
It steers it. It moves the stern drives from left to right, but it does it and it locks them in at higher speeds so that the drives don't flutter in the back to make it safer.
Okay, but that is in fact what steers the boat.
Yes, right here.
Okay, can we get a camera shot of that? Maybe we can get a nod of the head. How about that? Is that helping? Okay, otherwise we'll have to get it afterwards, but we'll do it through TV technical magic if we have to. Moving down from there, we've got these things that I would actually I'm going to call them skids because it looks like that to me, but I'm sure that that's not correct. What are we looking at? Because I obviously see here that we're connected with the aircraft line, so I presume there's something hydraulic there also.
Right, they're called a K-plane. They're hydraulic leverage planes that adjust the attitude of the boat. When you're going in different seas, if the boat's leaning to the left or to the right, you drop one of the tabs and it'll adjust the attitude of the boat. If you want to get the nose of the boat down, you would take and drop the tabs down and would shove the nose of the boat down in rougher water so it plows through the water instead of flying up in the air.
Okay, as a matter of fact, we have spent some time out here on the water today, right, Janet? You were flying around Lake Michigan in this boat today, isn't that right? And you know all about how to operate this thing, so maybe you can demonstrate to our audience, give it a shot and show us how these, what did you call these,
The K-planes.
K-planes? Let's see how the K-planes work. Go ahead, Janet. Yes. Okay, go ahead and bring him back up again because we just chased Angie off the off the show here. Okay, I've got a question, Bob. It would seem to me that these, well, but we're going to confuse our audience. I was going to say it would seem to me that does pretty much the same thing that trimming the outdrives would do. But first, maybe we better show our audience what trimming the outdrives means. Would you agree?
Yes, I think it'd be good.
Okay, I'm sorry. We've got a question up here, Christine.
You recall when we did the RC boats, and we were showing these particular items on the back of those boats. Is this relatively the same thing, only just much larger?
It's exactly the same thing, and what she's talking about, Bob, is we did a couple of shows with radio control boats, and one of the fellows, one of his innovations was he had a power trim on the, well, it was an outboard, but he was actually able to take and adjust it while the thing was during a race, depending on wind conditions and all that. He could adjust that by radio frequency, and they also, of course, they called them trim tabs, same thing, except they weren't hydraulically controlled. They had to adjust those.
Right. Yeah. Basically, the stern drive, when you trim the stern drive out, that leverages the nose of the boat up to get the boat up so it doesn't run so wet in the water. What it does is it allows the boat to start breaking the water loose farther back for higher speeds.
Okay, and how does that differ from what the K-plane does?
Because the K-plane really, the best way to describe it is the K-plane does left to right adjustment versus, and it also does the up and down on the nose, but the stern drive does the most amount of lifting of the nose by trimming it out.
Okay, I think we want to operate that now. Janet, you're our what would we call you? Captain of the ship. I guess you're our captain up there for, it's okay for her to be captain for a few minutes, isn't it?
Sure it is.
Okay, go ahead and adjust the outrights. Maybe we can get our camera, if we can get a, what do we need? Andrea, we need you over here. Don't step out of the camera shot, whatever you do. Go ahead and operate those, what would you call that again?
The stern drive.
The stern drive. You know, those propellers are pretty sharp, Angie. I don't know if this is the smartest place for you to be.
I think we need some insurance for the folks that do this show.
Not a chance, that's all I can tell you. Anyhow, these things tilt up a considerable amount. Now, it looks to me like if you had them in that position, it looks to me that would literally drive the tail of the boat into the water and really lift the nose out.
Yes, it would. That's a little extreme on the trim of it because this is a surface drive here that we have on the back of this boat. But that would, at this angle, it would lift the nose up tremendously.
Okay, but basically the idea is what we're looking for is maximum performance from the boat, and I would assume that would vary according to water conditions. I would assume it would vary according to speed, throttle opening, etc.
Right. In rougher waters, you wouldn't trim a drive out as far as that. Only on calm water where you got to get the nose of the boat up to get less running the surface back farther. And when you get into rougher water, you'd want to trim the drive back into water deeper.
Okay, follow me over here. I want to point out one other thing, and this I found, as I've said, I'm certainly not an expert on boats. I know only very little about it. Step right over here with me, Bob. As a matter of fact, while we're stepping back here, we're getting a sign here from our cameraman that we're going to have to change tapes. So, folks, while we're changing tapes, I want the girls to say hello. In fact, the girls that are all around here right now, I want them to say hello. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. Meet the girls, and we'll be back, and I want to tell you about these props.
Hi, I'm Janet Mailer.
And I'm Chris Schutz.
I'm Andrea Oswald.
I'm Angie Kay. Now that everyone has introduced themselves, it's time to take a look at Adrenaline's propellers.
For some reason, Bill was fascinated with them.
They didn't look the way he expected them to look, and that always prompts his curiosity.
Let's go back to the shop and find out about some new technology.
Well, I wanted to go right to these razor-sharp propellers, but Bob, you want to explain something else first, right?
Yeah. I want to explain a little bit about the drive here. This is what they call a Mercruiser number 4 Speedmaster. And the reason they call it a Speedmaster is because of the bullet-shaped design that it has. And the reason that it's called a number 4 is because it's 5 inches shorter than a normal drive that brings the propeller up to the surface. The propellers that you see here are 30-pitch, what we call cleaver propellers. This prop is designed to run 50% in the water and 50% out of the water.
Let me stop you there right now. First of all, Janet, we've got our boat captain up there. How do you want her to turn this?
Turn to the left.
Right now, turn the boat to the left. She can really do this very well, can't she?
Oh, yeah. It's very easy to operate one of these
We
boats.
probably wouldn't have really even needed you out there to run the boats today. We've got Janet.
No, she could have got in there and...
Yeah. Well, see, Janet's from Indiana, so she's probably used to shooting back and forth to Chicago and Lake Michigan with something like this. Right, Janet? Right. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can understand this a little bit and explain it to our audience. This particular, I'm going to put my back to the camera. Sorry, folks. This particular unit here is called a number 4, apparently because it raises the center line of the prop shaft higher out of the water than would a normal unit.
Yeah, what it does is it allows you to bring the propeller to the surface without bringing your motors up higher in the boat that changes your center of gravity. So to keep the boat stable in rougher water, you want the motors down as far as you can to the bilge of the boat, the bottom of the boat. And with this number 4 drive, you're allowed to do it.
Okay, so in order to keep the motors low in the boat and to have an out drive, we need a special drive to keep the props higher in the water without raising the motors at the same time. Have I got it about right?
Right on.
Don't be afraid to jump in here if I've got it wrong, because we want the audience to understand this. Now, the significant thing, and the thing that struck me most when I was out here looking at these boats, was these razor-sharp propellers, which looked to me to be kind of impractical because, it'd be very easy to nick them and everything. And you were telling me that these are designed this way because they run with almost half of them out of the water, and it's a surface braking prop?
It's a surface piercing propeller. As the propeller turns and then it hits the water level, it cuts it. This is the cutting edge of the propeller. And as it's going around, it's cutting the propeller to propel the boat forward.
Okay, now, the obvious question that strikes me, and I'm sure would strike most of our audience, is why don't you want to stick the propellers down in the water? It seems to me that's what makes the boat go forward, is to have them sticking down in the water.
That's the old theory on propellers.
Thanks, Bob.
And a lot of boats do run with them down into the water, and that's how a propeller is really designed. This is new technology in propellers and stern drives.
Okay, so this is kind of a new thing, and my guess is, and I'm just guessing because as a racer, these things all have to make sense or they're not going to work. My guess is what you're doing is working on that old compromise. The less prop you have in the water, the less drag on the boat, but on the other hand, then you've got to figure out a way to get bite on the water. So my guess is that, yeah, probably if you took the prop out of the water except maybe an inch, you'd have almost no drag, but you'd have almost no forward thrust. And if you stuck it all the way in, you'd have lots of thrust because you'd be taking a big bite out of the water, but you'd have too much drag, and you're trying to find the right point for maximum performance. Am I guessing right?
Exactly. Hit it right on the head again.
See, this guy knows how to treat a television show host.
Exactly. A normal boat would run like a 23-pitch propeller, but as we bring the prop closer to the surface, we get up into the 30, the 32-pitch propellers. We also go from a 3-bladed prop to a 4-bladed propeller.
Let me jump in and ask you a question real quick, because we've done some shows on aviation, and I have some interest in aviation. And well, an airplane's got power when you look there and it's got a big 12-foot 4-bladed prop like a P-51 Mustang, because it takes a ton of power to turn those. Is it the same in boats? The more blades, the bigger diameter, the more power, or is it something different when we deal with water?
What it is it's the slip factor. That's the slip factor is between actual speed and theoretical speed. And it's like a slick on a dragster. They have slip. There's not 100% bite on them, and that's the same thing we work on with a propeller. The 4 blades have less slip, and they bite harder up on the surface. A 4-blade propeller, if you put it down deep in the water, wouldn't work as efficient.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so it is slightly different than an airplane in the air.
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, so again, I always say that the motorsport community can learn a lot from each other, but this is apparently one of those things that's separate. It works differently in water than it does in the air. Now, we're going to do a couple of things. Number one, you're going to give us a little bit of a speech about hull design, and I've even got a ringer to throw at you for a question. Now, this boat, would you call this a deep V?
This is the deep V.
Okay, this is a deep V, very popular for this kind of racing, for offshore boats, but the other kind of boat that has actually become more popular, I understand, because it's faster, is a catamaran?
Is a catamaran. That's an air entrapment hull.
Okay, but as we've explained to our audience so many times before, engineering has one sure thing. You don't get something without giving up something. So you must be giving up something with the catamaran in order to get the speed.
Right. The catamarans, when it gets up into the rougher water, into the 6 to 8 footers, they have a real hard time running because you have to keep air in the tunnel. And the V-bottoms could charge through the waves, and the catamaran's got to fly over the waves. It's got to keep air in the tunnel. So you lose it in the rougher water, but in the calmer water, the cats are about 25 miles an hour faster with comparable power.
25 miles an hour? You're talking about the difference of several hundred horsepower.
Same horsepower.
No, what I'm saying is that if you were going to try to pick up 25 miles an hour on this boat, you're going to have to add 400 or 500 horsepower on this particular. Let's say this thing maxes out. I think you said today a little over 100 miles an hour for this boat. Is that correct?
Yeah, this boat runs 103.
Okay, if you wanted to get 125 miles an hour out of this, you probably got to add 400 or 500 horsepower.
Well, you could add the horsepower, but you would run out of hull on the V-bottoms. The catamarans, they run like they're on training wheels. so you could run them at higher speeds.
Oh, is that right? Well, listen, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a look at a catamaran and do a couple of other things. We want our audience, once maybe some that joined us late, we want them to have another look. It's a little bit more action footage. This is the girls, and Andrea, you were out there riding around today, right?
Yes, it was.
And you loved it.
Yes, it's great.
I want to once again rub it in that, Angie, you couldn't do it, right?
Gee, thanks, Bill. No, I couldn't do it.
Because you were working again, right?
Right, but I know it was fun.
Well, if that's satisfactory to you. I do have one question, though. Where'd you get this bow tie, Andrea?
Well, we were going so fast. It flew off me, and this is another one.
Yeah, maybe you should ask her what happened to the old one.
Yeah, maybe that would have been more appropriate to ask, where was the bow tie you started with today?
In the water somewhere.
Somewhere in Lake Michigan, probably. Janet, when you're down in Indiana, take a look at the shore. It's probably floating down.
I didn't even see it fly by, you know?
Okay, I don't think we can hear you because the mic isn't up there. In any event, folks, enjoy a little bit more footage. We're going to take a look at a catamaran now, Bob? Is that what we're going to do?
We'll go to the catamarans.
Okay, folks, don't go away. We'll be right back, and you can enjoy this footage.
It's time to look at more footage of adrenaline in action.
And everyone but me getting a ride. Boy, I wish I could have gotten there earlier. It looks like you guys had a ball.
It really was great. It's hard to imagine a boat that big being that fast and skipping over large waves like they were nothing.
Let's return to the shop and find out more about hull design. Hi, I'm Angie, and we're speaking with, would you tell us your name?
Bob Otringer, Thunderboats.
Hi, Bob. We are standing in front of two boats called catamarans, and would you like to explain why these are called or what makes a catamaran different from some of the other boats?
The difference between the V-bottom and a catamaran is an air entrapment hull, which you can see here on my left. What happens is it's like two V-bottoms with a wing in the center. And the faster the boat goes, the more air gets trapped inside the center of the boat and creates lift. Where a V-drive uses the stern drive to lift the boat, a catamaran uses air.
Okay, is there a difference in speed?
Yeah, the catamarans run on the high side of about 25 miles an hour faster than a V-bottom will.
Okay, as far as steering goes, is one easier to steer than the other, or does it not make a difference?
Well, they both steer about the same, but the catamaran is a lot more stable in certain water conditions. It's actually like just driving a Ferrari down the highway. You sit down in the catamaran versus standing up in the V-bottom. It's actually like it's running on rails.
Is it a lighter boat?
They're usually about the same weight as the V-bottom for size.
Okay, do you have any preference, or is it just like with sports cars, you either get automatic or manual transmission just depending on whichever you like?
My preference is the catamarans. The V-bottoms are from yesterday, and the catamarans are more for tomorrow.
Oh, so they're more modern type of boats.
Yeah, it's a new technology, just like the surface drives are.
Okay, Bill, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, nicely done, Angie. Truly, you almost don't need me here, do you?
Maybe not.
Okay. I do have a question, though, and guys, maybe if you can follow me down with the camera. Bob, no, Angie, stay where you're at. Bob, come on with me. I noticed these, and I think we can get a camera shot of this one here in particular. You have sort of actually I would call it, in fact, it's a fairly significant step built into the hull here, and you've got another one down here. I'm going to walk past the camera shot now. Tell me about it. What's that there for?
Okay, what you have here is this is what we call a ventilated bottom, or a step bottom. And what it is it reduces the drag on the boat. And what happens is, well, actually, what you see the two steps is this one is higher than this one than the front. So it gradually goes up about 3/4 of an inch bolt.
Kind of a gradually decreasing step as it goes back.
Actually, the hull gets shorter back here.
And what does it do?
What it does is it creates lift along with the tunnel, with the air in the tunnel, and then as the boat enters into the waves, it breaks the wetted surface, so there's less wetted surface, so the boat will accelerate faster coming off the waves.
So it's a way of getting the boat up on the plane quicker?
Not quicker, but as it's going along when the boat's planed off. Instead of having all the drag of the water hanging on the bottom of the hull, the steps break it loose faster, so the boat will accelerate faster. Instead of when it goes down into the waves for the boat to slow down, this one will accelerate faster coming off the wave.
Okay, second question. Now stand up and just back yourself right up there. And guys, if you can follow us with this, we want to make sure that the audience sees that this is in fact what the front of a catamaran looks like, correct? It's actually two hulls.
Right, it's actually two hulls with a wing in the center of it. The air goes through here, separates from the water, and then fills the tunnel up with and allows the boat to rise at the higher speeds. A catamaran, depending on the size and the width of the tunnel, will lift at different speeds.
Is there any lift built into the hull design itself? And when I'm talking about lift, I'm not talking about lift necessarily the water generating, I mean air flowing over the surface of the boat.
Yeah, the top of the boat is actually designed like an airplane wing. As the air goes over, it's got a high and a low spot that creates lift at the higher speeds. Up somewhere in the 100-mile-an-hour range, the boat will lift up higher.
So you want to get these cats up out of the water for less drag?
Right. You just want the back 2 feet of the boat in the water. That's it.
Okay, Christine, you had a question before. What was it? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I do.
You up, Angie?
Okay,
Angie's question.
It was what?
It was Angie's question.
Okay, Chris stole Angie's question. Go ahead, Angie.
I noticed on this boat there's a rail to hold on to in the passenger seat. Now, when you're steering with all the bumping around, does it affect you? Do you jiggle around with the steering wheel sometimes, or?
No, you have more control being in the driver's seat. We put the grab bars on the passenger seat for the passenger to hold on to. Some of the
Need them. Yes, and they need them.
in rougher water, it gives them to hold on to, so they have the more psychological hold on things when we're going in the rougher water. Plus, some of these boats are set up for the throttle man on the right side, so he would hold on to the throttles with his right hand, the grab bar with the left hand, so he doesn't jab the throttles forward when the boat surges in and out of the water.
Okay, we've got to interrupt this now. Our production crew is giving us a hide sign. We're running out of tape, but I want guys follow me down here because we've got another question, and that'll be the first question that we come back to as soon as we come back. Andrea, do you remember the question you had?
Yes.
And what did you want to ask?
Do the boats ever, I see they come out of the water, do they ever tip over backwards, or like the turns we were taking, do they ever tip sideways, or do they ever tip?
Okay, we'll be back to that as soon as we get done changing tapes. Folks, don't go away. Again, we will be right back.
Did you understand the advantages and disadvantages of the various hull designs?
Sort of, but I think Bill's going to get into it a little more. Were you really worried about the boat flipping over?
Sort of. It went so fast and kept leaping out of the water, plus it was really leaning in the turns.
Well, let's return to the shop and find out if you had anything to worry about.
Andrea, you're on. What was your question again?
Do the boats tip either when they go up and they flip backwards, or when you take a turn? Do they tip over?
Bob, I want you to explain this one.
Well, any boat can tip over or barrel roll, it's called, but most of the time what they'll do is in rough water they'll stuff. It's when the nose comes down off a wave and the boat can't keep the nose up, and it'll just plow through the next wave. That's usually the most serious thing that happens, and all you do is get a good bath.
Okay, I think what her question is, and you're obviously correct in your response, but her question is, we've all seen, for example, the unlimited hydroplanes on television, and they have a relatively common occurrence, unfortunately, called blowing over, that they blow over. It seems to me that's a feature of the hydroplane hull design rather than something inherent about boats. Would you agree, or can you comment on that?
Right, well, the catamarans have a tendency of doing that. What happens is they fill up with too much air in the tunnel, then the attitude of the boat changes, and the boat will start lifting the nose up, start lifting the whole boat up, and then they blow over. These catamarans are designed these are like an offshore catamaran. They're designed for rough water running with just a little bit of lift compared to the lift that the tunnel on a hydroplane has. The tunnel on a hydroplane is about 4 to 5 times wider than the catamaran that we're standing in front of right now. So that causes more lift. The wider the tunnel, the more lift you would have. So they have more of a tendency of blowing over. Plus, the speeds are a lot more extreme than what we're running with these.
Okay, in other words, an answer to your question, Andrea, is that anything can turn over. Any boat can turn, any car can turn over and all that. However, it would really take some doing on these boats, whereas on an unlimited hydroplane, it kind of takes some doing not to have them blow over. Now, I've got another quick question. I'll bet she doesn't remember again. I asked her to remember the question this time while we're off camera. Christine, what was your question?
These boats, the front of these boats, the catamarans, they look an awful lot like the pickle fork design. And you said that they're not, but what makes it different? It looks like a pickle fork.
Bob, I can handle it if you can't.
Okay. It does have the pickle fork design because the sponsons are sticking out forward of the center of the boat. It's just the design of the boat. Some of them, they come out 2 feet, some come out, a foot. It's just the design and who designed the boat.
Right. The second part of it, of course, is the traditional pickle fork design would not have the sponsons running all the way to the back of the boat like a catamaran does. It would generally end up in kind of a shallow V in the back of a tunnel. Or am I incorrect? I'm sorry, in a pickle fork.
The pickle fork would have more of a flat area on the back of it, more like a flat bottom for drag racing type to get the boats up to higher speeds. These catamarans that we're standing in front of again are more like a deep V all the way through from the front to the back in order for it to slice through the water with the tunnel in the center.
Very much like, for example, a Formula One tunnel boat.
Yeah, exactly, except the back of our boats are more V-shaped than the Formula One boats are.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
The terms drag and lift were also used on these boats. Now, are those terms used in the same way that they would be for an airplane?
I think they are, but I think we're probably on a boat talking about 2 things. We're talking about drag and lift in water and drag and lift in air. Yes, no?
Yes, exactly. There's 2 different things.
It's 2 different things, but the same principles apply. You just have to attack them differently in that. All right, now I've got a ringer to throw at you, and I don't even know. In fact, we should have told this to our audience right at the beginning of the show, and I wanted to get into this a little bit about your background, Bob. What did you first start doing in motorsports? Obviously, this is heavy-duty, big-time motorsports, but what did you start with?
I started with drag racing in my early years.
Drag racing cars?
Drag racing cars.
Where?
We were up at Union Grove, Wisconsin, the local drag strips around, and I used to run a Camaro, 67 Camaro.
Okay, how quick?
It ran 980s.
Oh, fast Camaro.
Yeah. I worked on the car for about 5 years. I built the car from the ground up.
So you were very heavily involved with drag racing?
Yeah, I was. And a lot of the technology and everything that I learned back then I've transformed into what I use on the boats now.
Right. There's so much we can learn from each other. There's no question about it. Sometimes it's a shame that we're so fragmented because there is a bunch we can learn. But how did you get to boats then from car drag racing?
I just was just tired of the everyday grind with the cars. So I was playing with boats a little bit, and then I started with drag boats, a jet boat that I was playing with. And then one day we were out running around on the lake, out here on Lake Michigan. I got beat up pretty good in it. And I just started playing more and more with other boats, and then I finally got into these offshore boats. Matter of fact, to your back is one of my original boats that I started out with in 1980.
Well, now let me ask you something here, though. If I understood our previous conversation correctly, you've done some of the drag racing at Blarney's Island.
Exactly. I started out there. I did that for a year and a half.
So you kind of went from the Union Grove car drag racing thing and then fooled around with boats progressively into let's go to Blarney's Island and see how we can do there?
Exactly. And then I went into the ocean racing type boats.
Do you have any explanation for that? That's an incredible jump, particularly, as I said before, in this area. I would expect it in Miami, but it's hard to, because literally this is I'm sure you would agree, very unusual in this area.
It was just a lot of just going out in the smaller boats and getting an undesirable ride, and then getting intrigued with the boats that can run through the rougher water at higher speeds. I can do the same thing with the smaller boat and the bigger boat, but go out in rougher water.
Okay, now I want to throw that ringer at you. That's why I want to get a little credential established. I want to throw the ringer at you. We've talked now about the Deep V, which was the boat that the girls were out running around on today. Everybody but Angie, we're out running around on today. And we've talked about the catamarans, and we've talked about the advantages and disadvantages of both, because I think you'll agree, you don't get something for nothing. When you give up one thing, you do it to get something else. Would you agree with that?
Exactly.
Okay, you wouldn't use a catamaran or a Deep V for drag racing. You would use something what I would almost call a flat bottom. I think some people would say a shallow V. I would actually call it a flat bottom boat. Why?
Well, in drag racing, in the boats, the flat bottom runs a lot faster. It doesn't have the drag of the V in the water. And they work also along with the pickle fork hydros. Those are the two boats that are drag racing.
Okay, what do you give up? It sounds great. Less drag. You can really scoot with the drag boat. What do you give up? I can tell you, I know the answer to this one, and I'm not into boats, but I want to hear you.
I think you're going to have me on this one.
Oh, no, I can tell you, you talk about breaking your back, every little tiny ripple you hit into water. I mean, the flat-bottom boats are murder.
Oh, the flat bottoms, if it gets the littlest ripple in the water, will want to throw you out of the seat.
That's what I'm getting at. I always want people to understand the dilemma that we wrestle with all the time when we're developing, whether we're doing a stock car that has to run on dirt rather than asphalt, or if we're running an aircraft that has to be run in rough weather rather than something that's limited weather conditions. All of these compromises always come into play, and that's kind of the fun of what folks like us do. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Okay, now I want to make a little quick speech here, and I want you to comment on it as we go, because we've got so many other things I want to tell our audience. We've got these, you guys build your own hulls, you've got your own mold plugs, you lay up all your own fiberglass. I mean, it's really something. You do your own upholstery. I mean, this is really quite a shop, and we want to show the audience as much as we can of this, so I don't want to spend too much time in one thing. But I want to talk a little bit about this, and I think this is the common dilemma that we all have. Guys, if you can follow me a little bit here. These happen to be a couple of V6 Mercury outboards, and when we set up for a ride today, we wanted the thunder and lightning of the big boat. The boat we rode in had, I believe, two 600 cubic inch big block Chevys in it, correct?
Yes, it did.
Okay, and what we had there was thunder and lightning, and I knew that we wanted to get the girls' reactions, and of course they were very impressed and everything like that. But I know enough from my boating friends that what scares everybody is when they see the outboards. Would you agree?
Yeah, everybody still feels that an outboard is a fishing motor.
Tain't so, is it?
No, it isn't. The outboards have come so far along that actually the outboards you can run 3-4 years at say 6,000, where an inboard will only last about a year at that speed because of the difference between the 2-stroke and the 4-stroke and the moving parts and everything else.
Right, the way I like to compare it, and of course we've got these here, and girls, as much as it pains me to do this, maybe we could ask the girls just to step aside a little bit so we can get a camera shot right behind you there, Andrea. We've got an IO here, which is actually an inboard with the outdrive, just like the bigger boat, except this only has one of them. Catamaran, is this about the same length, Bob, the two boats?
They're identical boats.
The boats are identical?
The boats are identical.
All right, but this one is equipped with two V6 Mercury outboards. I'm going to guess, I'm betting this one's faster, or am I wrong?
Yeah, this one's about 6 to 7 miles an hour faster than the IO boat is.
And as much as it pains us to admit it, because I like the thunder and lightning too, much of it pains us to admit, this one you probably run 2-3 years without taking the motors apart, whereas you're probably going to be into that one.
Yeah, about 1 year on the IO motors, and you'll have to do some work at the high RPM that we run them at.
Christine, I ought to stay close to you with the microphone. I should know better. Go ahead. Come on, step forward.
Does IO mean inboard, outboard?
Let's ask the expert right here. It does, but maybe you want to detail that just a little bit further.
Yeah, IO stands for inboard, outboard.
Why would someone want both?
You're not getting both. It means the motor is inboard and the drive is an outdrive. For example, let me show you. This is good to explain to our audience. Guys, I hope you can follow this. All right, this is a complete outboard, okay?
Right.
This is the motor portion of it up here. It's got the shaft that goes down and it turns with a bevel gear down here and drives the prop at the bottom, okay? That's an outboard. Everything is outboard of the boat, okay? Now, step back here. Now, do you see that this particular drive unit right here is identical to the lower part of the outboard?
Oh, it sure is.
Okay, do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, but something's missing at the top here.
Right.
What's missing at the top?
The engine.
Exactly correct. This is an inboard engine.
Oh, okay.
Thus, it's an IO, inboard engine out drive.
But
That's-
what is the advantage to wanting to do that? Look, it seems like more work that way.
Well, there's a couple of advantages. If you had an inboard without the outdrive, you'd have to have a prop shaft coming out of the bottom of the boat with a rudder behind it. They don't maneuver well, and you're the boat guy. Please don't let me put words in. You say it.
Yeah, the prop shaft coming out the bottom of the boat is yesterday's technology. The outboards on the back of the catamarans are highly passe. And then the stern drives here with the car motor hooked in the front of it, which give you different motors you can select from and that.
Right. There are so many advantages to having the outdrive on here, and there are a lot of people that wanted to try to get they wanted the inboard engine, the low RPM, the 4-stroke, and all that. But the advantages of an outdrive rather than a prop shaft with a prop coming through it, low-speed maneuvering in harbors and what have you, they're not nearly as maneuverable and all that. This, you can turn these, and it moves the boat literally sideways.
You're referring to it as an outdrive. Now, is that the same thing as outboard? I mean,
Nope. This is an outboard. The complete engine and outdrive or drive.
this part is the outdrive.
This is the drive, but it's an outdrive. The drive isn't internally in the boat.
Okay.
It's all out here.
So, in other words,
If I'm not, correct me if I'm not saying it right, okay?
Okay.
You got it now?
Yeah.
Okay, but anyhow, that's what an IO is. The motor is inboard and the drive is an outdrive, okay? Folks, I hope this was of some value to you. We've got more to look at. As I said, we want to look at their fiberglass operation, and he's got a race boat. How long is that thing?
It's 38 foot.
He's got a 38-foot Thunderboat that's just awesome. You've got to see this. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
That's all we have time for this week.
Next week, we'll look closer at how the hulls are constructed.
And we'll look at Bob Oetringer's own personal race boat, American Obsession.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
Until next time, I'm Angie Kay. Thanks for watching.
Until next week, I'm Chris Schutz. Thanks for watching.
I'm Janet Mailer. Thanks for watching.
Watching Motorsports Unlimited each week is a new and interesting way to learn about the motorsport community. Until next week, I'm Andrea Oswald. Thank you for watching.
The Motorsport Advancement Crusade is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation and enhancement of motorsport. We are entirely funded by voluntary contribution. For more information, you can write Motorsport, or you can write the whole thing if you'd like, Motorsport Advancement Crusade, but mail us to us just fine, addressed Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois 60666, or just call it 1-312-478-4224. We enjoy hearing from our audience, and we encourage you to call or write.
Until next week, I'm Pam Pollock. Thank you for watching.